like a long week. Is it just me? I think I got myself very carried away with the football and very invested in it. I'm a plastic fan. I only turned up for the big events, the glory ones. But we did really well. Just want that to be noted because a lot of people being miserable about it. It's really sad, isn't it, that we didn't win, but flip a neck. We nearly did, to be honest. I think that Italian player who dragged one of our players to the ground was responsible for the whole thing going wrong. And also, if women ran football, I'm just going to say this, would just be like, play on till the final goal happens. That's what it should be like, just in my opinion. Somebody with no experience of football whatsoever. It just seems more obvious. Football is not a game of penalties. Football is a game of football. Just let them play on. Somebody will get knackered. An extra goal will be scored. So simple. Such a simple thing. And far less stress-inducing. It's very stress-inducing. Had lots of kids round here yesterday watching it together. And they were all hugging each other and just hoping, and then snatched away by this stupid penalty rule. So if anybody would like to put me in charge of UEFA, that's fine. I'll be there and I'll do it. And I'm sure it'll be very nice, and there'll be cake, because that's what women do. We like to bring cake to events. Anyway, is it just me who feels it's been a long week? I believe that the conversation in the Commons today has been, I'm not going to say positive, but at least we are moving towards the ending of restrictions. As everybody knows who comes here before we start this, of course, if you want to wear a mask till you're 109 years of age, you should absolutely be allowed to do that. I have no issue with it at all, as long as you look after it and you don't keep touching it and you make sure it's clean and you wash it a lot, because that is a bit of a problem, and they're seeing problems because of people not doing that. But got to respect anybody's idea of what makes them feel happy, haven't we? But equally, I do feel glad that we're starting to hopefully move to a more normal experience of life to some degree. I don't know whether that's absolutely going to happen, but certainly if Johnson has come out and said that whilst they may suggest that people wear masks, or they may suggest that people think about a bit of distancing, but it's not enforced, that's good. Very, very upset to see that the police bill has gone through. Cannot believe, having worked for a very, very long time in protecting children, young people, having to deal with some really, really heinous cases where people have been murdered, and certainly where women have been sexually abused and men have been sexually abused as children. Can I get some of those cases in the past to court? No. CPS dropped most of them, without question, most of them. But now if you protest, you can get 10 years in prison. I don't understand that. You can get a £5,000 fine if you use a loudspeaker outside Parliament. You can get 10 years in prison if you deface a statue. I do appreciate criminal damage should be dealt with, by the way. Not for 1 minute thinking it's all right to deface a statue. No matter what our perspectives are about the past, they're there for a reason. You don't have a right to vandalise. 10 years? Are you joking me? I've had children who have had the most horrific experiences, and I can't get 2 years for their perpetrators. So not sure why that's happened, but nonetheless that is something that's gone through. And I do believe as well that Mr. Gove has been done for illegally giving out contracts to his friends. So I do think at this moment in time it makes sense that a lot of people are feeling uncertain in their mental health, and that's because when nothing feels certain, it's very anxiety promoting and provoking, and when you can't trust sometimes the people that you really wish to trust, which is certainly what I've always wanted to do with my government, understandably that makes people feel shaky. So same as I always say, understandable that people are struggling. Secondly, let's all be dead compassionate to each other. Even if we don't agree with the fact that our neighbour wants to carry on wearing our mask, or you want to carry on wearing a mask and your neighbour doesn't, let's just be compassionate. The one thing that I really liked about football, and I'm sure that all of you will have got this, is that it didn't really matter where people were about their feelings. There was this one common interest, and I always say that. There is far more that connects us than separates us. And when everybody's looking in the same direction, the vision is very clear, and it makes for a much happier community. And that's the other thing that I was going to say. I was interviewed the other day about the way that people are feeling, and obviously the recognition that people are very anxious for very different reasons, all ends of the spectrum. And it really struck me that when they were asking me what needs to change, it's like, well, what needed to change was 40 years ago. You stopped closing youth centres and community centres. Stop blaming people for mental health crises. Stop blaming people for COVID cases increasing. Stop blaming people, full stop. Actually, let's look at the root cause. We've got a major problem with poverty in the UK. 1 in 3 children live in poverty. How is that acceptable in a developed country? I mean, how is that acceptable? It's 1 in 3 children. And that's more poverty now that we've seen these issues carry on in the way that they have. That £20 top up that people were being given for the benefits, that's getting taken away soon. That's a lot to a family in poverty, and yet we're seeing these kind of things happen. And also, let's go to the very big root of it, which is that we don't have community anymore. Community is everything. You know, a community hall is where a mother takes a child and she has a village to raise it with, and that is so important. Youth centres used to be pretty much every street corner, and it's what kept our kids safe. It's what kept our kids occupied. It's what gave them peer experiences. Yeah, there are problems that go with it. Believe me, I used to run them. But the point is, the benefits far outweigh the issues. It's community, and the only people that are responsible for that community being decimated are the people in control of the UK. And that's where everybody has to start thinking about less individualism, more community. Because if you don't have people talking to each other, connecting with each other, looking after each other's kids, and all of the things that go with that, from the new mum who's exhausted and just wants to be able to chat to somebody who's been there in a community centre, through to a 14-year-old kid who's having a horrible time at home because the parents beating them up, and they can go to a youth centre and just feel like they're connected. Until we really pressure our society to go in that direction, we're going to keep going in the direction that we're going in, which isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable, is it, when they have to close off paths to certain hotspots that are suicide orientated because too many people are using that option. That is not a failure on the individual. Like, suicide is never a failure on an individual. Suicide is a failure on its society. And I mean that because when you deal with a suicide, you think that it's about your family, your problems, your issues. No, it's not. And you can see that because there are places in the world where it hardly exists. And when you go to those places where it hardly exists, what do you find? Yes, poverty, but you find incredible faith, usually, a spiritual connection, and solid community. And they're the antidotes to what I think is a Western epidemic of depression and unhappiness. That's not on people. It's not that people are failing. It's not that you guys who are struggling aren't trying to thrive. Of course you are. This ridiculous assumption that people are feeling self-pity. I was asked the other week, I cannot believe I was asked this question in public domain on a podcast for a very, very big newspaper. I was basically told, do you think that people think depression and anxiety in young people is just fashionable? Apart from my head just exploding on the spot, the reality is, are these kind of belief systems being entrenched and ingrained in our society, where this idea that you are choosing to say you are depressed or anxious because somehow you get a badge of honour with it? Depression and anxiety are increasing in our young people. They are increasing in our older people. In fact, suicide is going way up in the older generation. Therefore, it is not about chronology. It is not about people choosing not to cope. It's absolutely a fundamental brokenness in our system. And the thing is that human beings have the opportunity to heal it. I'm so tired of hearing about the green agenda. Honestly, don't get me wrong. I completely, as you know, what my life is about. Animal rights. We're plant-based in our house. You couldn't get people who think more about that. But you know what? Is the green agenda as important right now to me as a poverty agenda? No. I don't care about bicycle lanes. I care about mothers going to food banks just so they can survive. That's what I care about. It feels like we have gone down this ridiculous avenue where there's a dead end and people are just banging their heads against a brick wall trying to make progressive growth, and people are just throwing money in directions where none of that matters. How can you fundamentally do anything with the world unless human beings who exist within it have the capacity to cope? And right now, in this moment, in the UK, people are struggling to cope. And it is not because they are reckless fools who cannot follow rules and regulations. It is because we are struggling as a community, and we are the resources that are required to heal it. Not the government, not the NHS. Nothing can heal us aside from the way that we are with one another. We have everything we need. If you think about money ending tomorrow, you still got everything you need. We've got people. People are all that is required. There are our teachers, there are our doctors, there are our nurses, there are our educators, they are our bin men, they are our cleaners, there are our Tesco workers. We have everything within us, right? Sorry for the lecture, but sometimes I feel like we're getting lost down this path that makes no sense and just keeps making us more and more unhappy. And it's just bringing it back to that context of, even in your own neighbourhood, there is everything that you need for a happy, healthy life. But we've got to start working harder at holding those in authority to account for the lack of opportunity that we see where the bedfellows of mental health and wellness are concerned. As I said, community, connection, resources available so that we're brought together, and understanding that just because that person works in Tesco doesn't mean that their standard of living should be less than that surgeon. That's about opportunity and privilege. That boy who's a mechanic, he could be a surgeon, or she could be a surgeon, because it's just all about putting things back together. It just, you got born in one postcode, they got born in another. Why does your time count for less? We'll never understand that, but it's the way that it is. And until we change that, I think we're going to have this constant issue with people becoming more and more disenchanted with each other. So the football brought that together for a moment, and I'm like, that's how society can be. Just take a breath and think about that for a second. That is how society could be. It existed in the last few weeks. You saw it. People were happy to be around each other. People were loving towards each other. People were connected and had a common goal and a common purpose. That isn't football. That's humans desiring connection. We miss the point. So, I wanted to give you that lecture. Obviously, other lectures are entitled as well. All the points of view are entitled. You have your own, it's fine. But I just thought I'd start that way. As a little reminder, there's been a lot of nudging in certain directions in the last 15 months, and I want to nudge in the other direction, and would help if you all started to nudge a little with me, just putting it out there. Also want to acknowledge to domestically abused people that football, and when we win and lose, does increase quite significantly domestic abuse. So if you are somebody who is struggling with those kind of situations and you're listening, please do remember that refuge and women's helplines are available, and even men's helplines, but we know that it's a more gendered crime. So be aware that if that's happening to you, it's not just happening to you, it's happening to other people. You're not alone. Make that reach, get in contact, get some support. I know it's hard, but you deserve it. Hi Emma, feeling really anxious. Oh, you're currently 21 weeks pregnant with your fourth baby. You've come off your depression meds as you don't like taking them when pregnant, but your anxiety is going through the roof. Is there anything you can do to try to get me through till the end? Thank you so much for your time. So first of all, I'm not a medical doctor, as you know, but I would have a conversation, dead genuinely, with your GP. Because when you're pregnant, the most important thing we've got to do, and you'll know this, you're on your fourth, you're an expert by now, we've got to make sure that your anxiety and stress levels are low. That is something we want to take care of. So your GP, as much as you don't want to be on your antidepressants, they may look at you and say, you know what, we're going to make a call here, and that call is you being depressed and anxious and really struggling during this pregnancy is not the right path for you. They have a lot of research now on antidepressants, my love, in pregnancy. It's not like some experimental drug that they're pushing on people. This is about people's research that has been long-standing, and I'm not suggesting you go back on them, that's your choice. I'm saying if you are really stressed and anxious, that can affect you both on a joy level with your children, but also just on a hormone level. You're already managing all of these exacerbations and volumes rising because of the way that you feel, because you generally suffer from anxiety and depression. So maybe first of all, have that conversation. So let's put that to the side. That's my advice as far as what you do with your GP, and I really think that's important. And the person who's looking after you, like a health visitor or a midwife, I don't know who you're involved with. It's been a while since I've had a baby. Secondly, there are support groups available. So Channel Mum has a support group. That's an online resource. You can chat to other mums who are feeling exactly the same. There's a postnatal depression course, but it can be used for prenatal depression too. And I know it because I wrote it and I did it. And there's lots of little exercises that you can do on there, which include things like meditation and all these other little things that can make it slightly easier. Again, one of the things that I will push, because I've done it and because I know it's done well, is you can either go on my app, which is on the App Store and Play Store under Appy, or you can go on YouTube, and I run a whole hypnobirthing site. So it's free, it's not going to cost you a penny, but You can practice hypnobirthing all the way through. You can do the labour ones and everything before. It's all about getting you in the mindset. And some of them go on for hours and hours and hours. They're professionally done. And I'm going to blow my own trumpet because I know a lot of hypnobirthing out there. And I know because of the amount of people who watch it and the fact that I get a lot of very nice things about the fact that people have been listening to them in labour and so on and so forth, that it is really helpful at just soothing you. So that would be useful. Again, the classic stalwarts, get outside for a couple of hours a day, even in the cold. If that means going to the park with your kids, get that white light on your skin, really connect with nature, because she's always going to be there, and you're going through a really natural experience right now. You're a mother, you're a creator, you couldn't be more of a special human being. You know, it's amazing, it's miraculous. And sometimes just going out and connecting with nature that way, it just helps you to really engage with that. Don't be a hero when it comes down to what you're doing with your body. Don't, you know, let's put it this way. Processed food is shit. Okay? There, I said it. I don't care which food company has a go at me about that. I don't care what government strand comes and knocks on my door. I don't care if some medic goes, well, that's not true. You've got a liver which is there for detoxifying. Yeah, you have. It's the same liver that fails when you drink too much alcohol. I know a lot about health, right? But how often do we go into a shop, pick up a packet of biscuits, or have some highly processed microwave meal and beat ourselves up about it? We don't, do we? We've normalised it. But arguably, if we are going to beat ourselves up about what we're putting in our body when we're pregnant, that's what we do. So try not to be a hero. When it comes down to things like antidepressants, your doctors put you on them for good reason. They've obviously been effective. You're trying your best to be the best mum possible, and that says something really special about you. But all your baby wants is for you to be chilled, to be happy, to feel healthy. And if you're not getting that, then that's something you need to think about. Because, like I said, including myself, if I go out for a meal and there's an Impossible burger, which is just basically processed rubbish in a burger, but you know, it's vegan, and it's got all the vegan mayo and the massively calorific and dead bad probably for me, I put it in my body because I like it and it makes me feel okay, and I don't have it very often, right? With antidepressants, sometimes coming off it can be very, very scary, and it can invoke quite a lot of the feelings that you're talking about anyway. So I just think, first stop, go to your doctors, just have that conversation. Don't be a hero. You're a mum, you're doing enough. But if you do want to be away from them, try my hypnobirthing, make sure you get outside, do look after what you put in your body. You want to put your premium grade petrol in, not your cheap knockoff stuff that you're not meant to legally get. We know that, yeah? And also, reach out. It's okay to feel depressed and anxious when you're pregnant. It's not you most of the time, it's just to do with all our hormones, isn't it? I mean, I hated being pregnant, loved labour. God, give me labour every day of the week, you get a baby at the end of it. But pregnancy, sod that for a lark. It's awful. Awful. Sorry if you love it. You know, there'll be women out there going, Emma, I loved it. I was so zen, and I've had 15. Me, get to the end of that 9 months, it was relief every time I went to labour. Absolutely relief. Relief, that's all I can say. So don't be a hero. That's the same to any of you, by the way. Don't be a hero. What matters is getting through however you get through, and that's pat on the back when you do. I'm struggling. My 9-year-old is being bullied at school. I've literally been dying for 4 weeks, and her dad is a cockwomble. You will get the award for my favourite word of the evening. I do understand how that will feel. So many meetings. She's had me to reassure her, but I cannot control the things that go on in his care. Okay. The problem is you can't. So that is a very simple way of me answering that side of the question. As a co-parent, the frustration is if you have a particular way that you are with your child, you know that you put them at the priority of your world, you feel the inextricable link, which we do, with those feelings, and like what you want to go and do is rip the heads off the kids who are harming them. I know that I mean it metaphorically, as in your head you imagine it, but the rage that it provokes can be really unsettling. And just know that's your primal protection. That feeling of being frustrated and angry, rageful, highly protective, that's your mama bear instinct, and it's there for a reason, because you die for your child, right? And back in the days where we needed to protect them from marauding tribes or from animals, we needed that instinctually, but it hasn't gone away. So it doesn't matter how realistic we are about the situation, we're always going to operate with that feeling. So first off, only control what you can control. You can't control your ex's behaviour, but you can control how you show your child the difference in yours. So the fact that you're going to have that conversation at least 20 minutes a day, concentrate and focus on what's gone on at school. Secondly, acknowledging the way that she feels, even if you can't change it, just allowing her that space. Third, start practicing gratitude with her in the evening. I know that might seem strange, but the younger you do it, the better it will be for the child. Get her to think of 3 things that have been good. Take the focus and emphasis off the bad. Remember, this time will pass, it always does, and we need to help our child see that. Then, how can you bolster her confidence? Listen, this idea that only vulnerable people get bullied is just not true at all. I've watched some of the strongest people. I've had clients who run companies get bullied by new directors, and they've been right at the top and then felt almost suicidal because somebody's come in, they've been a psychopath, and the impact it's had on their world has been catastrophic. It wasn't about them being vulnerable, it was about them being unlucky. So your daughter isn't probably dealing with some mass vulnerabilities that they're all homing in on. It's just kids at that age can be really cruel, mainly because they haven't got the consciousness to understand the impact that they're having. So every day, 3 things she's grateful for, 1 thing that she struggled with, but she's managing, and that might be, I'm managing going to school in spite of the way it feels. Then think about the activities that can bolster confidence. So for me, I'd always look at something like jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, anything physical. And the reason for that is evidence shows that children who get involved with martial arts just have a lower incidence per se of bullying. I don't know whether that's because ultimately it shifts their power balance. So it's a sense of, I know what I could do to you. Obviously, we don't encourage violence towards other children unless it's defensive. But it's almost about a recognition that because they can, they feel stronger. And when somebody feels stronger, just everything about them changes. Another thing, what we know from studies is the way that somebody holds themselves also has an impact. Teach your child to have her chest out, shoulders back, walk tall. I might sound really, really small and silly, but it's really powerful. It's the first thing that we do with vulnerable people, because let me tell you, a psychopath can literally spot you walking down an alley and will tell you whether you've been attacked before or not. They can see by your gait. The more we train ourselves to be upstanding, the far less likely we are to be in situations where we're attacked. It's classically proven, and I think everybody can tend to recognize what it's like seeing a confident person. So help her in that way as well. When it comes down to the co-parenting part, it depends what kind of relationship that you have with your ex. Some people are very much of the mind where it's like, this is just childhood, just let them deal with it. That sense of you've got to go through the pain to grow resilience. And if he's got that attitude, then it's going to be hard for you to shift that, because for him, he'll be emphasizing this idea that it's a rite of passage. It's one of those things that kids go through. But if you can somehow show him compassionately and with complete understanding and empathy that the impact it's having on your child is really challenging, that may help. So you could get her to write down her feelings in a journal and then ask her whether you can share those feelings with daddy. Because if she can put them down and express them, 1, it's cathartic. It's a cathartic experience, you know. You're sharing the fact that you feel this way and it validates you. But then secondly, if you share it with him and are like, listen, we're in different places where we parent, and that's cool, that's totally okay. But we have this significant issue. And this significant issue is, this is how your daughter feels at 9 years old. Or get her to record it. Sit down with her and pop your voice notes on without her knowing, because you don't want her to feel at that moment in time like she's on the spot. And then when you've recorded her feelings, say to her, look, I've recorded this conversation between us because I think it's really important that people understand the way you feel, and the special people in your life understand what's happening for you. And then if he hears how upset his daughter is, then it will really help him to recognize that this isn't just something that he can pass over. People regularly don't take bullying seriously. It's great that you do, because you're going to be her biggest cheerleader. But try to think about those things I've said. Getting an interest group like martial arts, I think, are great. Secondly, making it real for her dad and most importantly, helping her to cathartically experience those feelings. And gratitude is a really good one as well, for just noticing the mini miracles. Like I said, if you go on my YouTube channel as well, there's a specific area for children who get anxious and children who get stressed. Not that she deserves to have to use those, but hey, they're free, they're really lovely to listen to, and it might just help her to relax a little bit. And again, posture, get her to walk with her head held high. A lot of the things that we change in the world change because of the way that we interact with it. So try that as well. That's a good one for anyone. Whenever I'm having like a downtime, one of the things I really notice, if I make my posture as positive as possible, you know, it's a very clear thinking process. It's not like I'm going, oh, you feel confident now. It's like I need to give a representation to the world, which makes me look like I own it in the way that I need to own it. So there would be no point me going on TV or no point me going and doing a tour if I was going to be slumped, because I'm giving the message that I'm not secure or that I'm not in a good place. And even if I do feel that way, I've got to present it, because then as I present it to the world reflects me. Think of life as a mirror. That's why you should surround yourself with really positive people. That's why you should surround yourself with new people from time to time as well, because we grow and develop so much in life, and very rarely, unless we meet somebody who's just meeting us completely fresh, do we get a true reflection of who we are. And it's a lovely process, because very often people have surrounded themselves with similar people that they've been involved in for many, many years. And then you meet a stranger and they're like, oh, you're great, and you're fantastic at this, or you stand out because of that. And you're like, I do. I didn't see that because I've just been growing older and I've not noticed my wisdom or my skill base, and so on and so forth. So that stuff can be helpful as well. Hi Emma, I've become paranoid leaving my house. If I have to go to hospital appointments, but I feel like everyone is watching me. So you will go to hospital appointments, but when you do, you feel like everyone is watching you. Now, that is not a long statement, so I'm going to have to break it down a little bit, because it could be that you're talking to me about the fact that you're going to your mental health appointments and you're realizing that you're becoming more suspicious and paranoid. If that is the case and we're talking mental health, it's really important to have a conversation with whoever is looking after that, whether it's CPN, whether it's a psychiatrist that you speak to irregularly, I know, or a clinical psychologist that you speak to, again, irregularly, I know, but nonetheless to feed that back. Because as you'll know, if it's a mental health issue, those kind of symptoms, particularly at a time during high anxiety, can symbolise that we need to get a little bit of extra care and help. However, I'm going to also bring in the fact that maybe you're just anxious, that you don't like leaving the house right now because you've become really, really worried about what's going on around you, and you feel completely paranoid and suspicious and anxious because you're worried about COVID and all the things that you've been told. So if that's the case, and this is not to do with mental health, this is about going to hospital appointments that you can manage for other issues, and it's just that now when you go out, you're really convinced that people are staring at you. Maybe you don't wear a mask, maybe you're exempt, and you're just feeling like everyone's noticing that. Or maybe the opposite, maybe you wear a mask and you feel like people aren't and they're really looking at you strange. So that could be to do with heightened anxiety around COVID and so on and so forth. Now, how do you manage that? Well, you are doing, number one, exposure work is what works. So you are going out and you are actually making sure that you confront your fears. Keep doing that. The more you expose yourself and have a response where you manage it, the better it's going to be for you in the long term. Also, things like relaxation really come into play here. So exercise is relaxation. You don't have to go and do crazy running or anything that kind of gets you high intensity. It can just be some really chilled yoga poses. Just whatever brings a little bit of exercise into your life is going to help increase your mood. It's also going to help to reduce your anxiety. That's what we want to do. Meditation, mindful practice, again, reams of it for free online. No one ever needs to pay for any of this. It's all out there. Also, what you're putting in your body. I am a sworn believer in kefir. You can do it in water if you're vegan, you can do it in milk if you're vegetarian, or if you eat meat, and so on and so forth. I am a big believer in it. So kefir is something that completely calms the gut. It's transformed so many people's lives that I know. And I mean this, even people on Twitter who follow me, they've started doing it. They've got back in touch and just said like, wow. When we control the gut, we often control a great deal of our body-brain balance. And kefir has been long evidenced. It's not some kind of new age weird thing. I am getting so tired. I'm getting so tired of people thinking that the only evidence base is if somebody has done some peer-reviewed funded study by some big pharmaceutical company. Absolute rubbish. My friend's brother is an incredibly well-esteemed man. He's a professor, Professor Holt in New Zealand. He has dedicated his entire career to mimicking the drugs that are given for people who've got conditions, and it's pharmaceutical, and creating natural remedies. He's funded by the government. New Zealand's like that. So he is living proof that actually natural experiences and natural remedies exist brilliantly. It's just they don't get the funding. But Kefir has got lots and lots. So have a look at that. And don't buy it anywhere apart from the grains on Amazon. You can grow your own. Worst thing in the world is when these people go out and they'll buy it. It's like £4 for a drink. And you don't need to do that. It's cheap as chips. And it's incredible. So gut balance is really important. And anything that's going to reduce anxiety. So absolutely, diaphragmatic breathing. Again, you can get all of that on my YouTube channel, but really acknowledging as well, this is hurting me, this is painful, I'm feeling this way. And it's because of a heightened anxiety state. Like I said, if you have got mental health issues, you need to be saying that to whoever you go and see, because that's about symptom checking and symptom reacting, you know, making sure that there's a reaction to the way you're informing your treatment need to go. It happens. People do get paranoid and suspicious. We have had a lot of things happen in the last 15 months that are very anxiety provoking. So allow yourself to have that conversation. There is nothing wrong with that. Also, I'd say to everybody, I'm an ambassador for the SOS charity. It's a great charity. They've got helplines. Also, if any of you want to volunteer for them, they're looking for recruiting. I'm going to be involved in the training, which is going to be really nice. But what I would suggest there is if you feel like you need to talk to somebody and you want somebody by email or you want somebody on the phone, you can ring their helpline for free. Don't ever feel like you have to cope with any of this by yourself. You don't. I know it's hard, but you don't have to cope with it by yourself. How do you deal with a narcissist parent feeling defeated? It's really hard, this, because there's a big part of my brain that says, okay, if this is really a narcissistic parent, as in classified, then it's going to be really hard for you to ever have the relationship that you ideally want with them. Because unfortunately, a narcissist is at the center of their own world, and that's all that really matters to them. So they want everybody else to play a part that benefits them. If you have an incredibly selfish parent, that's different, because some parents are just really selfish. They're not narcissistic. They just have figured out that if they act this way, the world acts that way. It's a bit like when we're talking about bullying. If I'm a bulldozer and every time I want something, I just knock someone out of the way, aggressively shouting at them and so on and so forth, unless the feedback has consequences that work against me, why would I change my behavior? So a narcissist, if it's a classified narcissist, well, that's a problem, because indelibly they're going to remain that person no matter what you do. All you can do is change the way that you react to that individual, such as, actually, I'm going to learn to say no. I'm going to learn to have very firm boundaries. When they try to manipulate me, I'm going to be hyper aware of it and even reflect that by saying, I'm really not willing for you to manipulate me. So I'm very clear. If they lie to me, I would, again, a lie can only occur if two people want to play that game. So there's no point saying to me, well, they lied to me, if you don't say, I know you're lying to me, I don't appreciate that behavior, please stop it. Even if they don't, the fact that you're acknowledging it, you're giving some consequences to them. So with a true narcissist, you're never going to win, because they're always going to be more manipulative, more nasty, more able to lie about things, and so on and so forth. But you can get to checkmate, where you basically let them know that whatever happens, you're not going to be the person that they can manipulate anymore. You're not going to be the person who's going to drain your resources for them. You're not going to give them money. You're not going to let their lies go unnoticed. And you're certainly not going to change your world to accommodate them. You have to be a really firm barrier in that way. So that's what I say if they are a true narcissist. If they're just really selfish, and you know, people think that really selfish people and narcissists are the same, but they're not. You know, a really selfish person is someone who's just learned that if they act this way, the world will be like this. But you can change their behavior. You just have to give them stern consequences. And a lot of us train people over time if we have the general belief that they're worth it. So, you know, it's like with young people. When our child is just leaving their clothes all over the floor, because that's what 13-year-olds often do, we don't kick them out of the house. We just gradually get them to do what they need to do, almost by osmosis. We don't have to shout at them. We don't have to challenge them. We just know that by mimicking behaviours that are positive, they'll often pick up on them, and then in the end, they look after themselves. That's how we grow. And it's exactly the same when reconditioning a relationship. Like, what do you need to change in that relationship? Because if it's, well, I need them to stop hurting me, well, no, you choose to allow that to happen. I know that's really hard to hear, and it's not a blame statement, by the way, at all. I'm saying you can choose not to be hurt by them by not allowing yourself to engage in the behaviour that promotes that cycle. You could arguably say, well, Emma, it's really hurtful for my parent not to love me in the way that I feel I deserve. And I'm reacting to that because I'm a well-adjusted human who deserves and wants the attachment and love of a parent. And I would absolutely mirror that those feelings are both valid, completely well-adjusted and understandable. And it's grief-striking when you get to have a parent who cannot offer you those variables. It's not fair. It is not fair, but you can't keep looking for it in that direction. It's not going to happen because they haven't got that capacity. You've not got the problem. You're perfectly capable. You're well adjusted. You're balanced. You're a human being who understands what a parent should be like. They have not got that memo. So don't look for it there. Look for it elsewhere. Where can you find good attachment? Maybe with your own children and so on and so forth. But like I said, if they're just severely selfish, you can just point that out. Remember, the other great thing about finding out whether it's a narcissist or somebody who's just incredibly selfish is this. A narcissist really won't care when you point it out and they won't adjust their behaviour. A really selfish person will care, will likely be defensive, will maybe go cold on you a little bit, but you just keep pushing in that direction and saying, no, this is how it's going to be, and they will adapt their behaviour. So it's win-win. You either get a better relationship with the very selfish parent who learns that that selfish behaviour is not going to be accepted, and now you're at a point where they start to manifest change, and it might only be change with you because they'll probably carry on the way they are elsewhere, or you'll just still have the narcissist that you know. The other thing, caveat-wise, I'd say is you can walk away from a narcissist. I don't think anyone should advise staying in relationships that are toxic, dysfunctional, painful for us and consistently repetitive as far as being negative. You should get out if that's the case. You have a right to a life where you are not dealing with that level of dysfunction. You have a right to say no. I don't care whether it's a parent or a child or a cousin or a friend or a colleague. If you get to the point where you know that that toxicity is so damaging for you, then you have a right to remove yourself from that relationship. And very often with narcissists, that is something that a lot of people work towards because it's just so painful to manage. Otherwise, try those things I've said. There are books out as well on narcissism that might be helpful, like how to deal with narcissists, how to get rid of a narcissistic relationship. You know, maybe look some up online. I'm sure Amazon will do like millions of them. They've got everything, haven't they? And there'll be some that are really goodly reviewed, so have a look there. Do you have any advice on bereavement, Emma? I've recently lost my mum and I'm in the acute grief stage. A friend suggested listening to your webcast. So first of all, just to acknowledge that 2 years ago, my dad took his life. I thought I understood grief. I really did. I'd nursed my best friend through cancer and she died. It was agony. Let me tell you, losing my dad has transported me to a world that I do not recognise. And I'm saying that to you because I know that right now, having just lost your mum, everything that you thought you knew about the world is going to feel so distinct. It's going to feel like you fell through the looking glass and everything feels at odds with what you know and what you knew. And the colour that used to exist will feel as if it's drained from every single area. And you'll go through these remote control actions where you have conversations with people, where you smile at people, where you go to the shops and buy food. But inside, you will have this constant voice just going, your mum's dead, your mum's dead, your mum's dead, your mum's dead, your mum's dead. And you'll know exactly what I'm saying now. And it's unbelievable because you have this catastrophic, magnificently enormous void, and yet everything around you is just carrying on. And you're frozen in time. Even though everything you're doing is what you have done going through the motions, seeing the people that you see, carrying on, you are frozen in that moment. And it's not a moment that suddenly moves on in a few weeks. I hate the way we deal with grief in the UK. I think it's so broken that we have this conversation with people as if, you know, you might get a day off work for a funeral of great meaning, such as a parent or a child. I'm like, mind blown. Truthfully, what people really need when somebody dies that they absolutely love, like a mother, you need 6 months off. I mean that. Just to kind of heal and start to get yourself back on track. And I don't mean heal from the grief, I mean heal from the acute shock, disbelief, fear, sense of how is there this mum-shaped hole in my life? How am I going to even begin to manage that mum-shaped hole? It's all very well for people to say, we've got all these other great things in your life, but with grief and a magnitude grief like the loss of a mother or a father, it's like, even though you have all this meaning, you have your children or you have your friends, you have your job, you have all these other things, somehow, even though you've got 100% of the self emotionally, it's like 85% of the self is the void. And we don't talk about that. There's almost like this sense of we're not grateful for our life if we don't just acknowledge how shit it feels, you know, but that actually we can cope because we've got all these other great things. No, it is shit, full stop. And it can feel overwhelming and terrifying. And the other thing that people don't tell you is it's totally isolating. So we have these situations where everyone's like, oh, just reach out and talk to people about it. Yes, 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 get it, get it, get it. When you are going through grief, you can be surrounded by your peers, your siblings, your parent who's still alive, your children, and every single one of those is as acutely lonely as you, but it makes no difference because you are experiencing that feeling. So what you're going through right now is going to be a mix of terror, loneliness, shock, disbelief, a sense of how can I carry this wound and look like I'm normal and functioning when I'm screaming inside? And I just want to say that is so normal. You're not broken. There's not something that's fell apart in you, although you'll feel it. And there is no easy way through it. There's just the way you do it. And there's no right or wrong. It's just the way you do it. I can only speak from a subjective experience. Now, bereavement counselling, Cruise is available. Again, there'll be a waiting list, but that doesn't matter. You can also speak to your doctor about getting on a waiting list. Again, grief takes a long time. So even if your doctor says, well, it's going to be 2 years, doesn't matter. Get on that list. Because in 2 years, your mum is still going to be a big presence in your world and a loss within it, right? And the more support you can get around that structure, the better. But just know that even though you feel like it's never going to end, this feeling, this fear, this terror, this tragedy is never going to end. What will happen, and I've always said this to anybody listening, you've obviously not come to me before, but to anybody listening, it's 2 years since my dad died. I'm still massively depressed about his death, massively. I live with it every single day and I'm very open and honest about it, yeah? But it's bubble wrapped enough for me to get to a point where I can have conversations. It's bubble wrapped where I can compartmentalise in the day the pain in a safe place where I can pick it up again in the evening and in the morning, which is when I'm allowed to give myself that moment of, wow, this is huge. How has this happened? And the things that go with it. So it's going to get bubble wrapped, but it's going to take time and it's never going to go away. Anybody who says the pain of grief goes away, I think is just lying to you. I think it's a complete platitude and it means that they've probably not experienced true significant grief. But I understand why, unless you've had that, you're going to say it because we all want to believe that we're going to get over grief. No, I think what happens is we just get better at knowing how to manage it in a way that means we can work in accordance with our world. And when we visit it, it still feels exactly as painful. So if I allow myself to visit my pain, it's instantaneous, I'm back in the room, right? I still find it very difficult to go to my mum's house at all because I just remember it as a place of love and it became a place of terror. So I know I'm traumatised even though my life is functioning, and it's okay to acknowledge that grief is that big, but you get better at the bubble wrap and you get used to the pain. And again, that might sound like some small positive. It isn't, because you get changed by grief, and it changes you in a beautiful way as much as it changes you in a challenging way. It makes you a better person, a kinder person, a more loving person. It makes you a better friend when they go through losses. It makes you less fearful of speaking your truth about it if you allow yourself to. And that isn't something you want to have to go through, but when you go through it, it's what happens. So just understand that these are growing pains of grief, and you will get easier at knowing how to bubble wrap that a little bit and put it somewhere safer, but not now. And you don't want to. You're going to have the raw, visceral experience of it. And how can you manage it? Well, first of all, no, you will find a way. It's in your DNA. We are coded to live and survive it. We don't think we will. Sometimes we question whether we even want to be here at all, and that's okay. It's okay to question that. That's part of the healing process. And the healing process for a significant loss can take up to 7 years and more. And by that I mean at the point where down the line you can be like, oh my God, I remember all those beautiful memories of mum or dad, and you don't necessarily get transported back to the impact. So that happens in time, but it's a long time. Then how can you keep bringing them into the room when you're ready? You might not be. So like me, you might find looking at pictures too difficult. You might not want to do a memory box. You might not want to even talk about them. But when you are ready, bring them into the room. Talk about them as much as you can. Remind yourself of their presence, because they're still with you. I always say to everybody who comes to my channel, I have to own my bias, because if I don't, somebody will complain to my awarding body and say that I'm giving my advice and it's based on things that they don't feel is appropriate because it's my experience. So I have to own the fact that I have a massive bias at this point, and you don't have to buy into it. But I believe that consciousness continues. I fully believe that. I actually, Pete, can you look at Martha's TED Talk on death research, just so we can pop it on? It's really worth watching. It's totally academic, so I'm not trying to push on you some kind of weird spiritual notion. It's neutral, it's based in empirical research, but it's very beautiful to watch. It's her San Antonio one, that's right, it's the top one that's come up. I want you to watch that. I promise you, you'll find it beautiful. Just stick with it for 15 minutes or whatever it is. It's worth every moment of it. But I believe that consciousness continues, and your mother is just in a different dimension right now. And I believe the pain that you feel from your belly, and I know that's where it is, and the agony that you feel kind of solar plexus area, I believe that's a thread. And I believe that the reason that you feel it so deeply is that you want to keep that thread connected, because one day that's going to lead you back. When it's your time and your consciousness continues, you'll be surrounded by, in my belief system, your mother who'll come and get you, for example. But you don't have to believe that. Not everybody has those kind of core beliefs. But death research, no matter what, is a beautiful area to study. And also, this isn't the one that I've put up. It's not about religion at all. It's not about faith. It's about research. But I found it beautifully reassuring when my dad passed, and when my best friend, I feel the thread, I feel the connection. And as I always say, just remember that horrible pain, it really is love in disguise. It's love and it's in disguise. And I know it's agony, but it's an exquisite agony. It's everything that you meant to each other. And it's still there. It's always going to be there. And she's going to be there in the words that you speak sometimes. She's going to be there in the actions that you take. And every single day when you look in the mirror, she is going to be looking straight back at you, because you are half coded with her DNA. You are her, she is you. It will never be anything other than that. And so too, if you have children, it will be the same story for them. The most important thing to remember is it sounds like your mother was fully loved. And a life fully loved is a life fully lived. And I hold that onto my father. No matter how tragic his end, he could not have been more loved. And it sounds like your mother is exactly the same. And that is a proud, proud relationship to hold. So I can't heal you. That's not something I'm capable of, though I wish I could. But I can empathise and own it and know that space and recognise the enormity of it. And it doesn't matter that everyone goes through their own different experience. This is yours right now. But like I said, try to focus as well at times on the collateral beauty. Go outside, sit with nature. Remind yourself of her constant. She's always there. She's always there. The universe absolutely has its patterns. From chaos becomes growth. From loss comes new beginnings. And even though we would do anything to have our special person back, just know that they are within us always. We are always connected. That's why you feel her. Think about it. Why would there be any biological requirement to feel love for dead? If we were just animals, born to live, procreate and die, it would be entirely damaging for us to feel grief. Grief gets in the way. Grief stops you working. Grief gets you depressed. Grief does the very thing that on a survival level can challenge you for a period of time. So why do we love the dead? We love the dead because they're not dead. They're just in a different space. And we feel them because they're still present. Don't ever lose sight of that. There's no biological, evolutionary reason for loving a dead person. It counters what would be good for us. Essentially, if it's about animal behavior and evolution, the person should die and we should be like, oh, okay, that's fine, see ya. That would work, right? But no, we have this incredibly powerful feeling and connection. That's for a reason in my belief, in my biased belief system. But that biased belief system has served me very, very well. Not sure if there's an answer to this, but how do I get over an ex while single-handedly raising our child? So first of all, you're going through a grief process, and not just a grief process. You've got a grief process with a child involved. So you have this amazing creation, this miracle that you two put together, and you had visions. We all do that. When we get pregnant with a partner, whether we're male or female, we tend to have some ideas about what's going to happen. For every miscarriage I've had, they've been at university in my head. Never works out. Neither of my kids, I think, want to go to university. What I'm saying is we all plan, don't we? So you had these visions. You got pregnant. You were going to be with your partner. You were going to have these holidays. You were going to have this future. And then suddenly all those visions get crumbled. And you're like literally left holding the baby, number one. Secondly, you're like, I feel grief for you too, for the child, because you wanted to make everything perfect. That comes from a really good place of parenting. So don't feel bad that you have those kind of feelings. Don't feel guilty, but don't feel bad for having those feelings, because that was about you offering your child the best, in your opinion, outcome of life. However, how do you get over him? An ex is an ex for a reason. I know that's an old cliche, but it's true. What we do with exes when it's broken down, particularly if they're the one who's made the choice to leave us, is we start to idealize them. It's fiction. We start to decide that they were only ever the good times. We allow ourselves to get romanticized into that because, one, we've had no choice over it, so our control's shifted. It makes us feel vulnerable. When we're vulnerable, we're looking for roots. The roots are often based in what we experienced with our partner, so we head back for that safety, but then the partner isn't there. So then we feel anchorless and rudderless, and we just feel like we're floating around, not quite knowing where we belong. But actually, if we start having more perfect vision and acknowledge the bits of the relationship that were not right and focus on that, not because we want to hate them, not because we want to abandon any relationship with them. You have a child, you are inextricably linked to that person, whatever. So it's good to have a co-parenting relationship with them. But be more rational about what happened towards the end. Because number one, you deserve better. Even if it was out of the blue and you thought you were living your best life with this person, they've left you. You do not want to be with somebody who has chosen either somebody else or a life on their own. You deserve somebody who raises you up, who idolizes you, who looks at you as their partner in crime, their most romantic experience. They want to spend their life joyfully with you and your child, and you'll find them. Only separates you is time. That's all that's happening. It's just time separates you. You're going to be with that person, and it's going to be amazing. And at that moment, you're going to be like, that happened for a reason. I'm so glad that happened for a reason. But you have to get a little bit down the line for that to start resonating with you. Right now, you feel lonely and overwhelmed. You're a single parent. Gingerbread is an organisation that actually can help with single parent issues. It might be helpful to kind of connect with other mums who are going through a similar thing. There's also places like Mummy Social, which are apps that are designed to kind of connect mums. Remember that what you want to fill is that foundation gap. So the time that you would have spent with him and your child maybe needs to be shifted to spend time elsewhere with your child and relationships that are going to really bring you and foster a sense of connection and belongingness. But I want you to remember the bad times, because most of us will be like, oh, it used to be so good. And we're looking back at the first 18 months of a relationship. It's like anyone can behave that long. Anyone can behave for a couple of years. I mean, I think most of us are in a honeymoon period for 3 to 4 years. It's only after that stuff starts to get real. So don't ever focus on the good bit. Focus on when it started to slide. And if he's left you or betrayed you, remember that the world reflects the relationships we're willing to accept. It's not victim blaming. It's not judging the person who does this. I'm saying it's a very common feature. If you are allowing people to treat you badly, then that world will be reflected. So basically you'll accept less. You will deserve less in your own mind. So you will be willing to put it with boundaries that are less fixed, less rigid, that can protect you. So really think about that. And then know as well, it's a bit like anything. There was a time before him. There was. And your life will have been good. There was a time before him. And likewise, there'll be a time after him where he doesn't even feature. He will just be the parent of your child, and you'll be so glad you met. You'll be so glad, like I'm so glad I met my ex-husband. He blessed me with 2 incredible children. How lucky am I? How lucky are you? But sometimes we just need to reframe that, and it's understandable to go through that grief process, okay? So just hearing it as well. I know I've not given you an instant solution, but just stick with it. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay, and you're not gonna be on your own. It won't happen. That fear, it won't happen. Just time is going to bring that person into your world. And when they come, you're going to be so glad, because they're going to be the person that makes you wake up in the morning feeling like you have meaning, and they're never going to leave you, and they're not going to desert you that way. Hi Emma, I've watched your live clinics but never had the courage to ask you a question. Always have the courage to ask my question, because I'll do it completely anonymously. I feel ashamed and embarrassed. I have nowhere else to turn. I recently came out as gay. I'm a girl 23 years old. I opened up to my mum, but she didn't approve. She told me I didn't raise you to be gay. So I'm homeless now and no family to turn to. I'm totally devastated and heartbroken that my own mum could disown me in this way. I feel suicidal and want to end my life. Your value is not dictated by the way that somebody reacts to your sexuality. Your value is what you believe in self-wise. Your mum gave you a shitty response, and I'm really sorry for that. I genuinely am. For any person who's gay, to come out is one of those things that they often worry about, because even though lots of the time now people are totally cool with it, you do get some bad reactions, particularly if you come from a religious background, for example. Not always, but you know, there are definite themes where those things happen. And what you hope for is somebody to embrace you and tell you that you're enough exactly as you are. And when you don't get that, it's very easy to think to yourself, well, there is something wrong with me. Like, being gay is as normal as being straight. I'm openly pan. My mother came from a background which was really quite Puritan, but you know what? Get used to it. I'm not going to change me. You change you. You're the one with the issue. My uncle's gay. The world offered him electroconvulsive therapy when he came out. His dad never ever accepted it. His mum never spoke about it, even though she loved him dearly. Like, I'm not going to live that life. You're not going to live that life. You saying you want to kill yourself because somebody doesn't approve of your sexuality, no. That's their issue. Her making you homeless? Wow, total overreach of power there. Like, you are not broken. You are somebody who is attracted to the same sex. That is not a crime. There is nothing shameful. You should not feel guilty at all. I'm not saying you have to end the relationship with your mum. Some people react really badly to coming out situations, treat people really badly, and I'm not saying that it's acceptable or even forgivable to some degree, but I am saying that over time, a lot of those reactions change, and you find that people become really advocates for the gay community when you give them some space to develop a growing understanding of the fact that you are exactly the same person. That's the irony. Your mum knows exactly the same human being that she knew 1 second before you told her that you were gay. If you got on with her before, then you'll get on with her again. If she's just a bitch, because we have toxic relationships, who's always looking at criticizing you and judging you, then you need a better reflection. I keep saying that tonight. You need a better reflection. The LGBTQ community is absolutely the most embracing community you could ever imagine. I want you to go online. I want you to look where your local LGBTQ, I want you to go and have a look. Get involved with them. They will be so embracing. They will be so open to communicating with you. They will help you so much. Also, YouTube. YouTube's got some awesome vloggers who talk about their journeys of rejection. Find your tribe. And believe me, I can tell you, the tribe where it is concerned in the gay community is one of the most endearing, embracing, compassionate, loving, understanding tribes that you're ever going to find. So okay, right now you've not got the support of your mum. That does not define you. Equally today, you could speak to 100 gay people who'll be like, you are better than good enough. You don't have to live to somebody else's standard. And, you know, we're talking about one person's opinion. I know it's a big one because it's your mum, but it's one person's opinion. I can find you people like me, people on this feed now, they're all going to be like, you are absolutely enough as you are. So automatically you're seeing that it's your mother's perspective that's skewed. And if you therefore go, well, my value is only based in her opinion, then it's going to feel like the world's ended. But if you go, the world is based in the reality of how people judge me as a human being, and my sexuality is part of who that is, you're going to find 95% of people embrace you and 5% of people reject you. So now you've got a 95% positive experience of being accepted. You have to stop looking in the direction of mum. Now the homelessness issue, of course, that's something that you need to get sorted. Universal credit, getting housing benefit, all of those things are things that you need to sort out. The more you get strategic and you make sure you've got a safe place to live, I don't know, you might be on somebody's couch at the moment, but start getting strategic. Put your mum on the back burner for a minute. And also in your family, are there other people who are more pro your situation? Have you got an uncle, an aunt, a sister, a brother, somebody who just is like, you're completely cool as you are, there's no issue with it? Because they're going to be really helpful for giving you that sense of foundation. And also they're going to hopefully go and tell your mum to get her act together, because no mother should reject a child because they want to have sex with somebody of the same sex. I mean, it's ridiculous. Reject your child, you know, if you find out that they're a paedophile who's been abusing children. Reject your child if they're a massive serial killer. And even then people don't. So I'm sorry, I've got no empathy with your mum whatsoever. But what I can say to you is you don't need to change yourself, and you certainly don't need to kill yourself. And if you do feel like you're suicidal, ring the SOS charity I've told you about, or text Shout. Shout is a good service as well if you don't want to talk, if you just want to text. But share that feeling and get in touch with your local LGBTQ, because I am telling you now, you will be like, oh my God, look at this world. All you are guilty of is love. That's it. That you want to be able to love and be loved. Like, how can that be wrong? How can that be shameful? How can anyone judge you for that? And I know they do, and I understand that, but they're rare. And like I said, you won't have one negative comment on this feed because you are fully accepted exactly as you are. Exactly as you are. Your mother is the one with a problem. She might need some time to get used to it. Or if she doesn't get used to it, well, I'm sorry, she doesn't deserve you in her life. You will have many journeys, many stories to tell. You'll probably have a family one day. These are all things that she would miss out on if she can't get over this ridiculous hurdle that because you fancy women, you don't deserve a place in her home. And no one gets raised to be gay. You know, that's not how it works. We're just born with a particular predilection for people we're attracted to. Simple as. Some people like me, I like everybody. Some people like you like girls. That's okay. You're enough as you are. But pick up that phone and call people if you need it. Right guys, I'm going to get going and I will see you soon. Sending you loads and loads of love and positive vibes. I know it's hard. Hopefully next week I'll be like, yay! And we'll all be like, come on, it's brilliant, Freedom Day's happened. But remember, I'll still be here no matter what. And we'll all get through it no matter what. One step at a time. You don't have to see the entire staircase for the journey to begin, do you? Just take a step. See you soon.